Ever feel like you're the outcast in your own family? For years, that was my reality. My sister-in-law, Jessica, with her glamorous life and cutting remarks, always made sure of it. But life has a funny way of flipping the script when you least expect it. When our tech mogul Aunt Mabel passed away, her will didn't just allocate assets. It set in motion a series of events that would challenge everything I thought I knew about family, legacies, and the complex tapestry of relationships. Dive into our tale, where fortunes shift, mysteries unravel, and two adversaries are thrust into a partnership neither had foreseen. It's a reminder that family dynamics are intricate, and sometimes a single piece of paper can change everything. My name is Kylie, and this is my story. Everyone has that one person in their family who seems to delight in making everyone else miserable. For me, that was Jessica, my sister-in-law. The moment I entered the family, she seemed to have it out for me. My husband, David, warned me that Jessica was a piece of work, but I had no idea how much until I met her. At our first family gathering, I tried to reach out to Jessica and strike up a friendly conversation, hoping to make a positive impression. "So, how do you find your work in marketing?" I asked innocently. She glanced me over with a look of disdain. "How do I find it? Well, first, I went to an Ivy League school, then I networked with the right people, but I suppose that's not something you'd know about." She smirked. I was taken aback. My job as a librarian wasn't the most glamorous, but I loved it and was proud of my contribution to the community. "Well, every job has its purpose. We all play our part," I replied, trying to keep the peace. Jessica laughed mockingly. "Right. Some of us play a bigger part than others." She looked me up and down as if appraising a piece of second-hand furniture. Every family gathering after that was a nightmare. From snide remarks about my clothing to downright insulting comments about my intellect, Jessica left no stone unturned in her mission to belittle me. I often wondered why she held such a vendetta against me. David reassured me that it wasn't personal. "She's just like that," he would say, wrapping an arm around me. "Don't let her get to you." Months turned into years, and my patience with Jessica grew thin. "I don't know why David married you," she once sneered during a family Christmas dinner. "You just don't belong in our family." "I think that's for David and me to decide," I snapped back. I often daydreamed of getting back at her, of teaching her a lesson, but I never had the guts or the opportunity to follow through. That all changed with the unexpected passing of David's and Jessica's grandmother, Mabel. I always had a soft spot for Mabel. She was sharp, witty, and incredibly kind to me. Despite her age, she had a spark that made her seem eternally young. Every time Jessica launched into one of her tirades, Mabel would intervene, often with a cheeky comment to shut her down. One evening, before her passing, Mabel and I sat in her cozy living room, sipping tea. "Don't let Jessica get to you," she said, patting my hand. "Some people are just bitter, dear, but remember, the universe has a way of balancing things out." Little did I know how prophetic those words would be. After Mabel's funeral, the family gathered for the reading of her will. Jessica, ever the opportunist, kept hinting at how she was Mabel's favorite and was likely to inherit the lion's share. As we settled into the lawyer's office, I took a deep breath. This is just a formality, I thought, preparing myself for another round of Jessica's gloating. The lawyer cleared his throat and began to read, but as he went on, my eyes widened and Jessica's smug expression started to falter. And that's when things got really interesting. As the lawyer, Mr. Jensen, continued reading out the will, the tension in the room grew palpable. "To my beloved granddaughter, Jessica," he began, and Jessica straightened up, flashing me a triumphant smile, expecting the most lavish part of the inheritance. "I leave my collection of porcelain cat figurines." Jessica's face went from elation to disbelief. Her mouth opened and closed, and for once, she was rendered speechless. "To my grandson, David, and his wonderful wife," Mr. Jensen continued. I leave my estate, including my house and my savings, amounting to $2 million. David and I exchanged shocked glances. We knew Mabel was well off, but we never expected this. But the real kicker came next. To my granddaughter-in-law, the lawyer read aloud, emphasizing each word, I leave my most prized possession, the rights to the patents and royalties of my late husband's inventions. The room went silent. Most of the family, including David, weren't aware of the extent of Mabel's husband's success. His inventions, many of which were medical devices, were still in use worldwide, bringing in significant income. Jessica's face turned a shade of red I hadn't seen before. "This has to be some sort of mistake," she blurted out. Mr. Jensen shook his head. Madam Mabel was very clear about her wishes. Jessica's eyes darted towards me. "You did something, didn't you? You manipulated her." "I didn't do anything," I said, feigning innocence, but I couldn't help the smirk forming on my lips. While I hadn't directly influenced Mabel's decisions, our countless conversations, where I listened, comforted, and valued her, clearly had an impact. Jessica, always too wrapped up in her own world, had never taken the time to genuinely get to know her grandmother. Leaving the lawyer's office, I felt a mix of emotions. Guilt, because while I hadn't wished for Jessica's humiliation, I couldn't deny the satisfaction I felt seeing her taken down a peg. Empowerment, because for the first time since joining this family, I felt like I had the upper hand. And gratefulness for Mabel's unexpected gift. As the days turned into weeks, I began working with lawyers and business consultants, learning about the patents and how to handle the royalties. The income, though significant, was not my main focus. It was the chance to immerse myself in something new, to learn and grow, that truly excited me. Jessica, however, seemed to spiral. Her arrogance and pride were shattered. Family gatherings were no longer about her snide remarks or cruel jokes. Instead, she seemed quiet, introspective. One day, out of the blue, she invited me over for coffee. I was hesitant, remembering all the times she'd belittled and embarrassed me, but my curiosity won out. I arrived at Jessica's opulent home with a guarded sense of trepidation. The grandeur of the place always intimidated me. Marble floors, vaulted ceilings, and ornate chandeliers spoke of a life of luxury and excess, a life that Jessica flaunted every chance she got. She opened the door dressed more modestly than I'd ever seen her. No makeup, hair tied in a simple bun, wearing jeans and a plain tee. It was almost as if she were a different person. "Come in," she mumbled, avoiding eye contact. As we settled in her living room, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. "Why did you call me here?" I asked, breaking the silence. She took a deep breath. "I've had a lot of time to think since the will reading," she began. "At first, I was angry, not just at the will, but at myself, at you, at the whole situation. But then I realized that it was nobody's fault but my own." I listened intently, wondering where this was going. It was the first time I had ever heard Jessica show any sign of vulnerability. She continued, "I've always sought validation from external things, my job, my social status, my wealth, but Mabel's will. It made me realize that perhaps those things aren't the real measures of a person's worth." I was taken aback. "Jessica, why are you telling me this?" She hesitated, looking down at her clasped hands. "Because I owe you an apology. For all the years of hurtful comments, of trying to belittle you, of making you feel like you didn't belong. I realize now that it was all just my insecurities speaking." Hearing Jessica's confession, I felt a mix of emotions. The anger and resentment from the past were still fresh, but there was also a part of me that empathized with her. "I spent so many nights crying, wondering why you hated me," I confessed. "But if I'm being honest, part of me also felt a sense of triumph after the will reading. a feeling that justice had finally been served. She looked up, her eyes brimming with tears. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I felt it was important for me to acknowledge my mistakes and apologize." As we talked, it became clear that Jessica's cruel behavior stemmed from a deep-rooted fear of not being good enough. In her own twisted way, putting others down was how she coped with her insecurities. Over the next few months, Jessica and I began to form an unlikely bond. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. There were still days filled with tension, misunderstandings, and the weight of the past. But little by little, the barriers came down. We started collaborating on some charitable initiatives using the funds from Mabel's patents. Jessica's expertise in marketing and my newfound knowledge of the medical industry proved to be a winning combination. We worked on projects providing medical aid in underserved communities and funding scholarships for promising young inventors. And while the journey wasn't always smooth, it became evident that Mabel's will had done more than distribute wealth. It had sparked a transformation in our family dynamics, especially between Jessica and me. However, just when things seemed to be settling into a new, positive normal, another unexpected twist was waiting just around the corner. About a year after the reading of Mabel's will, David came across an old trunk in the attic of her estate. It was a worn-out chest, heavy with years of dust, and seemed to contain a trove of memories. As he rummaged through the old photographs, letters, and keepsakes, he stumbled upon a sealed envelope addressed to Jessica and me. The handwriting was unmistakably Mabel's. Curiosity piqued, David called both of us over. We gathered in the living room with the evening sun casting long shadows on the hardwood floor. The mood was contemplative as David handed the envelope to Jessica, who hesitated before tearing it open. The letter inside was written with the elegance and eloquence that was so characteristic of Mabel. "My dearest Jessica and Kylie, if you are reading this, it means that my time has come and gone. There's something I've long wanted to share with the both of you. Though it's a part of my past, it has a bearing on your present. I was much like you, Jessica, proud, stubborn, and in constant need of validation. My younger sister, Eleanor, was the family's shining star, beautiful, intelligent, and beloved by all. Envy consumed me, and I made it my mission to overshadow her at every turn. But life has its ways of teaching us. Eleanor fell seriously ill, and it was during her days of suffering that I realized the triviality of my jealousy and pride. We mended our relationship, but the years wasted in pettiness still haunt me. You both remind me so much of Eleanor and myself. I wanted you to know that families can heal, relationships can mend, and it's never too late to start over. Remember, real wealth isn't in possessions or status, but in the love and bonds we nurture. I hope my decisions in the will make more sense now. Cherish each other and always choose love over pride. With all my heart. Mabel." The room was silent, the weight of Mabel's words sinking in. Tears streamed down Jessica's face. "I had no idea," she whispered. "She always had a bigger picture in mind," David mused, "even when we couldn't see it." That evening changed everything. The letter acted as a salve on old wounds, helping Jessica and me understand Mabel's intentions and our roles in her grand design. The pain of the past began to fade, replaced by a sense of purpose and a determination to honor Mabel's wishes. But as life often proves, when one chapter ends, another begins. A few days later, I received a call from a lawyer I hadn't heard of, informing me of an old debt Mabel owed, which now was my responsibility due to the inheritance. The sum was substantial, enough to jeopardize all the charitable projects Jessica and I had started. As I grappled with this new dilemma, Jessica stepped in, offering to help financially. It was her chance to show she'd truly changed, to prove that Mabel's lessons hadn't fallen on deaf ears. The road ahead wasn't easy. We faced legal battles, financial hurdles, and the ever-present shadows of our tumultuous past. But with every challenge we overcame, our bond strengthened. A few months into our legal battles, Jessica approached me with a proposal. Why don't we merge our resources, pool our money, hire a team of the best lawyers, and tackle this head-on? We stand a better chance united, she suggested. The Jessica of old would never have made such an offer. But this was a changed woman, and I saw the wisdom in her words. And so, our unlikely alliance became a formal partnership. The news of our joint venture made waves in the local press. Two heirs, once at odds due to a controversial will, now collaborating to preserve their legacy. During this time, we also discovered the depth of deceit we were up against. The supposed debt was more complex than we'd thought. It appeared that certain individuals, seeing an opportunity after Mabel's passing, were trying to fraudulently claim vast sums of money. We hired a private investigator, and the trail led us to an unexpected revelation. The mastermind was none other than a distant relative who felt slighted by Mabel's will, someone who believed he deserved a piece of the vast fortune. With this discovery, our battle took on a more personal dimension. It was no longer just about money. It was about honor, family, and the legacy Mabel entrusted to us. The ensuing court battle was grueling. Our lives seemed to revolve around legal strategies, court dates, and endless paperwork. But Jessica and I became a force to be reckoned with, leveraging our unique strengths and leaning on each other in moments of weakness. One evening, after a particularly challenging day in court, Jessica turned to me. Do you ever wonder why Mabel did what she did? Not just in the division of her assets, but by keeping so many secrets? I thought for a moment. I believe she wanted to teach us something. She had her journey with Eleanor, and perhaps she saw history repeating itself with us. Jessica nodded. I often think about that letter, about how she saw herself in me. It's humbling and scary, but it's also a reminder that we have a choice in how we shape our legacy. Our determination, coupled with the overwhelming evidence against our relative, finally bore fruit. The court ruled in our favor, dismissing the fraudulent claims against Mabel's estate. Our legacy was secure. As the dust settled, our partnership evolved. With the money saved from the legal victory, Jessica and I expanded our charitable projects. We set up an institute in Mabel's name, dedicated to supporting young inventors and providing medical aid to underserved communities. The grand opening of the Mabel Institute was a testament to our journey. Family and friends gathered, speeches were made, and there, at the heart of it all, stood two women who had transformed their animosity into a lasting legacy. As I stood on the podium, looking at the sea of faces, I reflected on the incredible journey. From the heart-wrenching moments after the will reading to the establishment of an institution in Mabel's name, life had come full circle. I think Mabel would be proud, Jessica whispered as we concluded the event. I think she always was, I replied, looking up at the sky, a silent thank you forming in my heart. The journey taught us that real wealth wasn't just in assets or bank balances. It was in the bonds we forge, the choices we make, and the legacies we leave behind. In the end, Mabel's greatest gift to us wasn't her fortune. It was the lessons we learned and the relationship we built. And as the years rolled on, Jessica and I continued our joint endeavors, ensuring that Mabel's legacy lived on, not just in the tangible assets she left behind, but in the love, unity, and purpose she instilled in us.